Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your humble host, Mark Swan, and I hope you are all having a weird and wonderful week. I know I am. I'm kind of bummed out right now. I just learned that on the main road outside my apartment complex, they are building an In-N-Out, and that makes me sad for a couple reasons. I don't know how much of a countrywide or maybe even worldwide phenomenon In-N-Out is, but it is such a big deal in the West Coast, and it's sort of spreading my way towards the Denver, Colorado area. We had one built on Interstate 25 a couple months ago, and it completely gummed up the roadway. I think that there was like a 15-mile line just to get an In-N-Out, and it was during COVID times. And as a result, the In-N-Out had something like 100 cases of COVID amidst employees, which is really, really strange that a burger joint would have 100 employees to begin with. But I suppose that makes sense considering how jazzed people are over this stupid hamburger. It's not very good in my opinion, and I feel saying something controversial like that is going to get some listeners to turn the episode off. I really don't like In-N-Out Burger. I don't get what the deal is. It's a fine burger. It's okay. It's not bad. I have taken several trips to the West and have gone with people who have lived and died on the insistence that we have to stop at In-N-Out as if it has the same sort of cultural importance as going to the beach or going to a casino in Vegas or going to Disneyland. It's like In-N-Out is the thing that you do when you go west, and it's fine. I'm not going to disparage them. I hear they take really good care of their employees, pay them a really good wage, totally fine, but I just don't like their food. I don't see what the big deal is. It's a greasy burger. Go to Wendy's. It's the same experience. Oh, I'm so waiting for the mean emails and comments for saying something like that. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to share any more hot opinions. In-N-Out isn't for me, and it's coming to Colorado just sort of bums me out because it just takes up so much space. The road off of my apartment is like 3 lanes, and it's just going to be impossible to navigate once the In-N-Out is in. I can just tell right now, and it's literally like 2 blocks away. It's ridiculous. Sorry. That has been my big issue, my big weird thing this week. On a more positive note, I do want to share that I have been reading a really fascinating book called Sex and Rockets: The Occult World of Jack Parsons by John Carter. This is a really, really interesting book. I did not know anything about Jack Parsons. He was an astrophysicist who created the rocket fuel that got NASA rockets to the moon. And that was sort of his sort of exterior life that people knew him for. But apparently he was also a huge occultist. He did rituals with Aleister Crowley. He called himself the Antichrist. It's a really fascinating tale, and I'll probably feature it as a full segment when I get done with the book. But in the meantime, if you want to book club it with me, read it with me, the book is called Sex and Rockets: The Occult World of Jack Parsons. I have the new edition, and it is by John Carter. That is my recommendation for the week. Moving on to today's show, we're talking MMA fights in space. We're going to look for love on a paranormal dating site. And we look back on the terrifying 2016 phenomenon of mysterious clown sightings. Do you remember this? It seems like it's been an eternity. But I remembered it. We're on like the 5-year anniversary of it happening, and I am just really excited to revisit it because, like many other millennials, I am terrified of clowns. I don't even know how they became a thing that people enjoyed. I cried at the circus. I have to assume it's because of the It miniseries, and I'm assuming that some of the clown sightings 2016 were because of the revival of the It movie. Stephen King, you are a sick person, but I do love you, and you are, of course, always a welcome face on the GSMC Weird News podcast. Now, to top off the end of the day, we're going over my top 6 favorite cases of mass hysteria. And this one is a really fun subject for me. Always about the mass psychology. So let's get into it, shall we? I don't consider myself a fan of violence. I don't really like watching people beat each other up for sport and profit. A bit of an ironic take, considering I made last week's episode about the 2021 Josh Swain fight. Maybe the exception that makes the rule is I only want to see people beat each other up over a Josh namesake. But when I heard that a production company is hoping to bring the brutal MMA sport into space, I had to take interest. Space 11 is a film and television production company with a unique mission. Its founder, Andrea Iervolino, is attempting to bring the entertainment industry beyond Earth's boundaries and have things like concerts, television shows, web series, and other forms of entertainment in space. One of Space 11's first projects is attempting to bring the sport of MMA, that's mixed martial arts, beyond zero gravity and actually having battles in space. The show is going to be called Galactic Combat, and it's described as MMA Zero G fighting. And if you sense the giggling in my voice, it's because I just find this show ridiculous, but it is apparently a reality. And by reality, I mean this is going to be a reality TV show that takes place over 12 months and will have over 40 contestants from around the world who will train and compete to hone their fighting skills in zero gravity. Eventually, 32 of the combatants will be eliminated during the training process, and there will be 8 finalists who will fight in zero G. I don't necessarily know how they're going to do this. I assume they're going to take them up in a big plane and have the plane do spins that sort of simulate zero gravity. That's the only thing I can think. And the only reason I would guess that is because that's what they did when they filmed the scenes for films like Gravity or Apollo 13. I'm just assuming that they're going to have fights while this happens. Anyway, of the 8 contestants, the final 2 who make it to the top are going into space to fight beyond the atmosphere. The series finale will have the combatants aboard a custom retrofitted rocket as it orbits Earth for 90 minutes, in which case they will leave Earth's gravity and they will have a final one-off to see who is the champion of space combat. Space 11 is very excited to make this idea a reality, and they've already enlisted leading engineers, astrophysicists, technicians, as well as several former employees of SpaceX and the International Center for Astronomical Sciences, GAL, Hassan, in Sicily. So I, once again, not a big combat guy, but I am sort of excited to see how this is going to work. More and more, I find myself seeing our society enter the science fiction weird world that I had always read about in books, and space combat. Wow, that's just weird. I don't know. All I can think of is that you're going to have 2 guys flying above the Earth and just flailing about. And does this serve a greater purpose than entertainment? Like, are we going to try and study what it means to fist fight in space with zero gravity? All I can think of is like Buck Rogers stuff, or just people floating around with really hokey laser guns shooting lightning, or having a knife fight in space. I don't know. Fighting combat as we know it is a very like terrestrial thing. You kind of have to have your feet planted on the ground. I can't really see how you really get like the torque to throw a punch or a kick when you are just flailing wildly in space. Well, so this story got me thinking, and I went to social media with a very specific question, and it is as follows. If you could fight any celebrity in space, and I made sure that that was specific, you have to fight them in space, who would you fight and why? And I got a ton of answers, and I'm so happy to share them with you. Our first answer comes from Justice from social media, from Facebook. Justice says, and I really like this as our first answer because it's so nonviolent. Justice says that they would fight Travis Barker with a drum duel in space. Now, for those of you listeners who do not know, Travis Barker is the absolutely insane drummer for Blink-182, as well as many other projects. He's a phenomenal drummer. I think he's most famous for drumming upside down or on like a gyroscope on stage, so spinning around doing a drum solo on fire. Really a phenomenal guy. Also just a really good guy. And I love the idea of doing a drum duel in space. That's a lot of moving parts, though. So I'm just imagining two drum sets flailing about in the zero Gs and the drummers trying their best to keep all the parts together. Maybe it would be a special space drum set where the entire kit is just soldered together or something. Jacob from Facebook says he would fight Macho Man Randy Savage. That flying elbow all the way back down to earth. Oh yeah, brother. R.I.P. Macho Man Randy Savage. I think if there was one person who would love doing the flying elbow all the way back into Earth's atmosphere, it would be you, Macho Man. And Jacob, I love that answer. I hope that we will all one day be able to fight our favorite wrestler in space. Erica from Facebook gives possibly a vague answer. No text, just a animated GIF of David Bowie as the Goblin King Jareth from The Labyrinth. And this is a fun GIF because Jareth is just sort of like smirking as if like you wouldn't be able to defeat me in space. Now, this is a good answer. I don't know if you're trying to say that you would fight specifically David Bowie, you know, the original spaceman, or if you would want to fight Jareth from The Labyrinth. Jareth was not really a combatant, though. He was really more of a, I'll steal your baby and put you in a giant maze and then sing and then throw the baby. But still possibly an interesting fight. I don't really think David Bowie was a combatant. I think he was more of a love, not war kind of guy. Next, I went to TikTok, and I love these answers even more. Nat B. Nasty on TikTok says Tom Cruise, because he needs to answer for Vanilla Sky. I actually haven't seen Vanilla Sky, but I did hear it was bad. So in order to get your vengeance on him, I wish you all the best, Nate B. Nasty. Ron Being from TikTok commented, Warwick Davis, I might stand a chance. That's kind of mean. Warwick's a small guy. He's also pretty old now, but more power to you. If it's really just sort of kamikazing yourself, since you think the only reason you want to fight him is because you could beat him. Good for you. Double Cross off of TikTok says Ted Cruz. No comment, but good on you. MF Atliano says Elon Musk, so he knows he cannot escape, not even in space. Well, MF, I would have to assume that Elon, being the crazy person he is, would absolutely accept your challenge. Scully Pal from TikTok says, the Gerber life baby, but only in baby form. I'd feel bad punching an old lady. You wouldn't feel bad punching a baby? TikTok sort of brings out the best in people. Next up, That Chicken Kid says, The Rock, what is with your people's confidence that you're going to be taking on, in space, professional wrestlers? Like, I know, look, spoilers, wrestling isn't real, but you really think you could take on The Rock? I mean, good for you. Now, however, 44 Goose Streaming says, somewhat related, Kevin Hart. You could probably take on Kevin Hart. He, another short guy, but probably not necessarily trained for combat. Good luck to you. Please don't pick that up, says Charlie Sheen. He needs to get his butt kicked. Charlie Sheen probably did some weird stuff in his life, but I think he's been having a bad time. Cheese and Water off of TikTok says Jesse Eisenberg, but when he played Lex Luthor because he was bald. Also, I think he's the most frail person out there. What? You want to fight him in space because he's bald? Okay, I'll take your word for it. This last one is actually a video reply, so I'm just going to play it, and this is going to include my original TikTok question, but I really like this answer. Also, I'm going to censor some of it out.
If you could fight any celebrity in space, it's specifically a celebrity, and specifically Abby Lee Miller from Dance Moms, it would be sick, dude. I just like, and then her helmet would crack, and then her face would blow up. It'd be awesome.
Okay, so Abby Lee Miller from Dance Moms. I really like that answer because I also don't like Abby Lee Miller. I used to watch Dance Moms, and that lady just used to infuriate me. She is not very nice to children. I suppose she gets results, but I don't think that's worth it. And if I had the chance to fight her in space, I would. Thank you for joining me on GSMC Weird News. After the break, I'm diving into the paranormal dating scene. And at the end of the show, I'm sharing with you my top 6 favorite cases of mass hysteria. This is the GSMC Weird News Podcast. I will see you after the bump.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. I am your illustrious host, Mark Swan. And before the break, we were talking mixed martial arts in space. And I also asked the question over social media, what celebrity would you fight in space and why? And speaking of social media, you can find the GSMC Weird News Podcast on all of our social media outlets, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, as well as all over the internet. And if you love GSMC Weird News, please consider checking out some of our other podcasts. We have so many podcasts. They cover a wide range of topics. And I'm sure if you explore, you're going to find something that you want to listen to, besides me talking about which celebrities we would beat up. Ultimately, though, I say let's make love, not war. That's why our second segment takes us to paranormaldate.com. I recently found this dating website, and I figured I'd have to share something like this with the rest of the weird news world. If you are a fan of weird news like I am, you may recognize the name George Norrie. He is one of the current hosts of the Coast to Coast AM talk radio and podcast show. I'm a big fan of the show, and I am a big fan of George. And the reason I bring up Mr. Norrie is because he actually is the founder of paranormaldate.com, and he said he started it when he would tour the country either at cons or speaking events, and he'd have fans come up to him and say, I need a place to meet people of like mind that understand me and my interests, in reference to the topic of the paranormal, the supernatural, and other weird news. And so he founded paranormaldate.com. In this day and age, there's got to be a dating site for everything. So I shouldn't be surprised that there's a paranormaldate.com, but I am regardless. And I was so surprised and excited enough that I would share it with you. I thought it'd be kind of fun to start a profile today with Paranormal Date and maybe bring you listeners in along for the ride. Maybe you're looking for a paranormal date. Who knows? Just to specify, this isn't a dating site to find ghosts or aliens to date. It's to find other people who are into the paranormal to date. So you guys have a thing in common. For the record, I'm not personally looking for love. I thought it would just be fun to see what this is all about. Full disclosure, I'm currently involved with my wonderful partner, Michelle. She and I are already quite involved with each other, and we do share love of the paranormal. We like to go to sleep watching ghost videos, like those top 5 spooky videos that are on the internet all the time, or we'll watch ghost adventures, or we'll watch UFO videos or conspiracy videos. We like to go to sleep watching those. But when I told her about paranormaldate.com, she was all too happy to oblige me, joining for the sake of exploring this community. She actually found it very sweet and hilarious. So I'm not looking for a date, but I am going to go through the process today with you. And Let's see what this is like. I am on the website. It says, soulmates interested in the strange. Join free now. Find your match that shares an interest in the paranormal. Life after death, ghost stories, UFOs, science, conspiracy, Bigfoot. Man, I want to hear the tale of the happy married couple that has been together for 60 years and they met and share a fondness for Bigfoot. This is I think it's a paid service. We're going to get into that, but I'm just summarizing the site. Maybe you could go to it yourself, paranormaldate.com, explore it with me. I'm going to go ahead and start a profile. Right at the top, it says I am a, and I'm going to click. It says I'm a man or a woman. Not a whole lot of non-binary options here, but we'll see what happens in a progressive world. I'm going to hit next, and it says I'm looking for a woman, man or woman. There are 3 options. I'm going to do man or woman. Mostly because I'm a free spirit, first of all, and second of all, if I can follow up on this and talk to some people on this website, that would be really cool. It asks my first name. I'm going to go ahead and give Mark, spoilers, and it's going to ask my birth date. I'm not going to say that aloud, just in case there's anybody trying to steal the identity of an illustrious podcast host. And I'm going to give my email address, and we're going to hit next. Oh, and then it's going to suggest a password. I'm just going to use a suggested password. I very much encourage anybody who is using Google Chrome, who has a Google account, to just use one of their suggested passwords. They're very hard to break. And as somebody who's had his identity stolen, I encourage you to use whatever security precautions you can. We have a terms of use. That's a little too boring to go over for something like a podcast, so I'm just going to accept and continue. The first process here, I am on the actual profile making part. It says to upload a photo. Let me see if I can find a good one of me. I mean, this is all for research and for the press, but that doesn't mean I don't want to look as handsome as possible. Okay. There we go. What do you like to do for fun? So I'm looking down the questions here and nothing real paranormal yet, but so I'm just going to give some short answers. What do you like to do for fun? I like to make podcasts. What is your favorite meal? That's a good question. And poutine, obviously. Who doesn't love good poutine? I'm from Maine. We love poutine. What is the most interesting fact about you? I don't really consider myself an interesting person, but what is an interesting fact about me? I'll just say I am a former punk rocker turned news podcast host. Save and continue. Let's move on. Describe yourself. I am a podcast host who loves the weird, the paranormal, the supernatural, and I want to talk to users of this site about their experiences. I think that's fair, right? I don't think that's disingenuous. Okay, now we're going to go into some appearance options. I'm going to answer these really quickly, just for the sake of not boring you guys. Height? Oh, they want to know my height. Yeah, that's a big dating thing I've heard. I'm not real big on the dating scene, but it asks your build. It says one of the answers is a little curvy, and I'm just going to say that. It asks your ethnic origin. This is a little strange. Religion. Okay, I understand that. Marital status. Well, it doesn't have mine, so I guess I'll put single. No children. Education. Woo. So they really want you to be detailed here. This is very much a dating site where people are trying to get like somebody they very much want a lot of options for. Occupation. Let's just say other. Income, that is none of your business, paranormaldate.com. Smoker, no. Drinker, light. Vegetarian, no. Save and continue. Still no questions about the paranormal. All right, step 5, select your interests. Classical music, rock music, jazz music, movies, animals, the outdoors, the arts, theater, restaurants, pubs and clubs, TV, radio, reading, the internet, cooking. Subject line. Okay, this seems to be the social media part I'm just going to be honest. I'm just going to say I'm doing a podcast episode about this. I'm doing a podcast segment about this website, and I want to hear from you. Oh, and then you can put emojis. That's kind of cool. I'm gonna do the smile with the teardrop on my forehead. Now it says introduce myself. I'm gonna make this short. I don't want this to be a segment to just be like me selling myself to potential paranormal love interests, especially because that's not really what I'm looking for. I'm Mark Swan, host of the GSMC Weird News podcast, and I am looking for your experiences with this dating sites. I think that's fair. I don't want to lead anybody on. I'm gonna save and continue. Your introduction has been submitted and is awaiting approval. All right, so it seems to hear that I may get rejected for this website. That is pretty funny. But now there is a big list of people here, and this is so weird. This is not really a website that focuses on the paranormal. But what I'm going to do between this episode and the next is message some people and ask them about their experiences on here and see if I get any follow-ups. And I would love to revisit this topic. In the meantime, I wanted to sort of go over some of the weirder dating sites that I've found after looking up paranormaldate.com. And like I said earlier in the segment, there are dating sites for so many interests, weird, wonderful, obscure, or whatever. And I'd like to visit a couple of them with you today. The first site on this list that I have for you today is probably going to be my favorite. Amish dating. AmishDating.com says, there's no better feeling than the one when love takes over your body and soul. You feel happiness and joy that overwhelms your entire being and make you feel like everything is possible. If you are craving that feeling, then come online and join Amish Dating in Canada. Well, that gets weirder and weirder every sentence. Am I missing something here? Is this a joke? Because I was under the assumption that anybody who would use AmishDating.com would not have access to AmishDating.com because the Amish, for the most part, reject technology. I do apologize for any Amish listeners out there, even though I don't think you exist either, because why would an Amish person be listening to a podcast if they reject technology? However, I'm sure there's a more knowledgeable person than me who can come and explain how AmishDating.com is a reality and how Amish people would utilize it. Maybe the restrictions on technology have become a bit more lax in these modern times, and the Amish do use the internet, or maybe some Amish use the internet. I do know that there is that year, I'm not going to pronounce the word because I'm not going to get it right, nor am I going to try and remember it at this time, but youthful Amish, I think when they become 17 or 18, get to leave their community for a year to see if they want to be a part of more modern society. Maybe this is for them. Maybe they are accepting that they're Amish and they're using the internet in the time being to find someone Amish to fall in love with. But AmishDating.com is probably my favorite oxymoron of the week. I'm giving it that stamp of approval. Please insert applause in your brains because I think we found it. Next up, I'm going to Tallfriends.com. This is a friend and dating site specifically for tall singles and tall admirers. At least they are honest in that particular fact that if you're the type of person who only dates somebody over a certain foot height, I know they exist. I've seen so many memes about them. There are a lot of people out there who won't date a partner that is too short, which is, sorry out there, short men and women, I am among you. I'm 5'9". I've never been in a situation where somebody never dated me because I wasn't tall enough, but I know it exists. And I guess if you're that type of person, then you would go to Tallfriends.com. It says tall dating and tall friends, the best, largest, and most effective tall dating site in the world. This is the best place for looking for tall dating relationships or marriage. We bring together tall dating-minded singles from USA, UK, Canada, Australia, Europe, and more. Here you could mingle with tall singles, tall beautiful women, tall handsome men, and those tall people admirers. I was wondering when I first went to this website if it was only you had to like prove that you were a certain height before you could join, but I guess tall people admirers sort of encapsulates anybody who is under a certain height who simply wants to date a tall person. Everybody has their preferences, no judgments. But this one is certainly a bizarre one for me. And hey, it's free to join. So if you're looking for a tall partner out there, this may be the site for you. Our final dating site for you today is probably my favorite, clowndating.com. Yes, you heard that correctly, clowndating.com. Their tagline is, everybody loves a clown. Let a clown love you. Well, if you think about our next segment, what I'll get into a moment, not everybody loves a clown, and I certainly don't want to let a clown love me. This is a website where you can meet clowns to date, I guess. It says, why clown dating? It's no fun looking for love when you're a clown. Behind all the makeup and the red nose is a lonely heart. Oh, clowns are unique entertainers loved by some, yet feared and hated by others. Yes, you have that right. Luckily, clown dating is here to help. If you're a clown wannabe, or simply a clown lover, you have come to the right place. Wow, I really want to hear from somebody who went to clowndating.com. Site features say it's full of clowns and entertainers, 100% genuine members, easy messaging, winks, online chat, free email updates, etc., etc. Hey, good on you if you're a clown looking for love. If you are a clown, you may not want to listen to this next segment. When we get back, we are revisiting the 2016 Mysterious Clown Sighting phenomenon. This is the GSMC Weird News Podcast, and we'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Swan, and before the break, we were looking for love in all of the weirdest places. I opened up an account on paranormaldating.com. We went and visited Tallfriends.com, where you either have to be tall or like tall people to be a member. And then, probably weirdest of all, I went to clowndating.com, which, as I'm still looking at the site, I'm looking at some of these pictures and I'm just horrified. Sorry, clowns out there. As far as I understand it, one of our other weird news hosts is a clown, so sorry about that. It's nothing against you personally. I just am one of those weird 90s kids who grew up and had my mom and dad watch horrific stuff like It, the 8-hour Stephen King novel mini-series with Tim Curry as the eponymous It, Pennywise the clown who would walk around and terrorize a town, eat children. If you're unfamiliar, well, first of all, where are you? Who are you? Where have you been? Under a rock? But I am not a unique case. I know so many people out there who have such a distaste for clowns, and I do think it was the sort of scary exploration of them, probably brought on most prolifically by Stephen King and his novel. Stephen you're a weird guy, but I do give you a lot of credit. He wrote that novel because clowns were disturbing in juxtaposition to how entertaining and funny they're supposed to be, and I think he nailed it. But it definitely incited a cultural phobia in a lot of kids, me included. That's not to say that clowns aren't or weren't an important staple of society. Clowns go back all the way to the recorded 5th dynasty of Egypt, where oftentimes the person who took the role of the priest would also take the role of a clown, using it to entertain society, do the act of clowning, which is just sort of japing and joking and causing laughs and entertainment and possibly a little mild discomfort in the peoples. So they've always been this weird sort of historical figure that's just subsisted. We've always had clowns. We've always kind of needed clowns. They definitely have died off in the mainstream limelight as of recently, and I think it's because of phenomenons such as It and Killer Clowns from Outer Space and that sort of 80s and 90s approach to the figure, just sort of making them more weird and horrifying than funny and pitiable. In modern times, we are embracing the scary clown aesthetic. Circuses are kind of dying out just because it's not really in vogue anymore. So you don't really see the clowns in the wild as figures of entertainment. But 5 years ago, we did see clowns in the wild as entities of mystery and horror. I'm wondering if you guys out there remember this. I'm sure some of you do. We're going to go ahead and get into our podcast time machine to the weird and wonderful year of 2016. This was pre-weirdest presidency of America's history. No comments there, good or bad. It was also pre-pandemic. It's sort of hard to think about life before that time. It's been a strange year and a lot has happened. But we did have a sort of psychological pandemic, and that is the one that happened worldwide, where there were mysterious and horrifying sightings of clowns. Now, when I first started researching for this particular segment, I had no idea that this phenomena was so widespread and so prolific. I really honestly thought it was maybe 10 or 15 occurrences of strange clowns showing up in unusual places and scaring people, or specifically kids. I'd only heard a handful of stories. And because I'm such afraid of clowns type of person, I really didn't pursue originally, just because I didn't really want to know about it. And I think it gave me nightmares at the time of ever coming across a mysterious, crazy clown out in the middle of nowhere. But actually, like I said, when I was doing research about this, I found out that this is a worldwide phenomenon with dozens upon dozens of incidents, and I kind of want to take you through the timeline. This is provided through my own research in Wikipedia. I kind of want to go through this. It's the 5-year anniversary of such a thing happening. When you think of weird news, you think of something like this. And when it's back in 2016, I was the type of person to be like, wow, the world is really changing. And I wasn't wrong, but it's sort of strange that it was weird clowns who were heralding the whole thing in. So let's step out of our podcast time machine in the weird and wonderful city of Green Bay, Wisconsin on August 1st, when there were multiple reports of a creepy clown walking a vacant parking lot under a bridge in the downtown Green Bay area at night. Now, we think yourself, if you take yourself back in time, it's like, it's not the strangest thing to happen. There are crazy people out there. There are people who are wanting to get attention. There are people out there who are trying to make a viral video or something like that. Or there might just be a weird guy who really enjoys walking around vacant parking lots with a clown suit. Regardless, this particular clown got a lot of attention, got national coverage. It eventually came out that this was possibly a stunt from a filmmaker, and there was a short film produced called Gags that was apparently related to the clown. And for all intents and purposes, you would think that the story would end there. But only a month later in Greenville, South Carolina, there were more stories of weird clowns roaming around in weird places. No origins of these clowns, no sort of reports on who they were. By October, there were further incidents reported in Canada and the United Kingdom and Australia. And these clowns apparently were not trying to be friendly. We're not really trying to be anything other than scary. And oftentimes the police were involved. The incidents were so numerous and strange that the president of the World Clown Association actually came out with a public statement condemning the people who were doing this. And in October of 2016, McDonald's put Ronald McDonald in the background because it was such a weird time to be a clown. My source here says that in Florida, because of course it's in Florida, around Halloween, people were taking their kids around trick-or-treating fully armed, just in case they came in contact with a mysterious, creepy clown. Of course, Florida. Never change, Florida. GSMC Weird News thanks you for all that you do for us. Meanwhile, around the same time, places like Russia and Fiji were offering warnings to people who were trying to terrorize their communities in clown costumes. It was this big of an event worldwide. In fact, places in New Zealand and in the United States were banning clown costumes, not only people wearing them, but even the sale of them at costume shops. In fact, around that same time, there were many reports of clown purges, which were loose outfits of people walking around and hunting and trying to beat up anybody who may be terrorizing their communities as clowns. A lot of these hunts took place on college campuses. Despite it being a horrifying thing, the scary clowns became somewhat of a meme, and so you can expect our youth to take action on them. There were reports of college students using baseball bats and other weapons, taking to the streets, looking for clowns to go after them. Throughout the later half of 2016, there were so many incidents reported and even recorded on video of attacks on both sides, meaning that as many weird and creepy clowns there were attacking people, there were just as many people attacking clowns. And this was not an isolated incident. Once again, this happened all throughout the world. North America, South America, we have incidents in all throughout Canada, Australia, Brazil, every province in Canada, Chile, Croatia, Denmark, all throughout Europe. This was something that was happening all throughout the world. And if you're somebody like me with a phobia for this particular, creature or whatever you want to call a clown, this particular entity in society, this is a scary time for you. I don't remember being crippled by the fear of coming across a clown, but I wasn't happy to hear that it kept happening. And why was it happening? And to that, I say there are quite a few answers to explore. Perhaps the first one is the most obvious. You may remember around that beautiful time in 2016, there was a movie being produced, filmed, and released that I mentioned earlier. The modern horror movie It, the reimagining and adaptation of Stephen King's novel of the same name. This movie was basically made because an entire generation grew up afraid of clowns, so why not capitalize on that? If you haven't seen It, even though I'm a huge clown fearer, I find this movie so great. I find it scary. I know there are a lot of people who don't agree with me, but horror is so divisive anyway. And I actually haven't seen the second one. I would love to hear in the comments and on social media if I should even bother. I kind of heard it wasn't as good, so I'm not bothering with it yet. Plus, I can only take so much clown horror. Anyway, I'm going on a little bit too much about film reviews. This isn't the film podcast. There are a lot of people out there that theorize that this mass clown phenomenon was the result of a viral marketing scheme for it that possibly went out of control. There were other movies coming out at the time with scary clowns, such as Rob Zombie's 31, and there are other scary clown outfits out there, such as the weird and just bizarre band ICP, or Insane Clown Posse, who I have to assume you've heard of this band. They've been around for a long time. ICP has been around for a long time, and they have definitely capitalized on the scary clown aesthetic. So when there was some weird clown sightings around the entire world, some people were quick to blame them and their gang or clique of followers, who are often known as juggalos. If you're not familiar with Juggalos, these are fans of ICP and other bands like them. There's actually a whole scene or community of these horror clown bands. Please, if you are a Juggalo or fan and I am getting this wrong, feel free to hit me up on social media and correct me. These guys were definitely around my high school. ICP was a big thing when I was in high school, and the Juggalo clique was always quite fascinating. They love wearing clown face paint. They like wearing the ICP paraphernalia. Very like family oriented. They saw each other as a makeshift family, perhaps above their real family. They were definitely inspired by the Insane Clown Posse lyrics, which usually had to do with over-the-top violence, scaring people. Definitely a counterculture thing. There were lots of lyrics and talks of rejecting society and being more centered around what's good for the clown family. A lot of times there were some less than palatable topics that they sang about, such as assault, violence on people, sometimes talks of misogyny. I don't know. The music world is a weird one, and it's not like ICP was the only people who were doing this, but they definitely were able to get a frenzied fan base. And I would have to say that the 2016 clown sightings really only empowered some of these Juggalos. It must have been a very fun and exciting time for them. As of the time of this recording, there really isn't evidence to definitively say that this was a viral marketing campaign for it or for the Insane Clown Posse or any other sort of entertainment venue. Like, I'm sure there were people who took advantage of it to maybe get some bad publicity, because as we know, there is no such thing as bad publicity, but maybe just to get to some attention, or rather, people were just trying to be part of something, no matter how sick and depraved and weird as it is. One of the more likely scenarios is this was a unique, snowballing, and out-of-control case of mass hysteria, in which many people are getting involved just because they are affected by the environment around them. And seeing something like a worldwide clown phenomenon, for whatever reason, may make them psychologically affected by it, whether to want to react to it or to want to be a part of it. And hey, since we're talking about mass hysteria, I think you'll want to stay till after the break, because I'm going through my top 6 cases of mass hysteria. This is such a cool subject for me, and I think you will be as entertained as I am going through some of the weirdest things that have ever happened to large groups of people with no rational or logical psychological explanation. We're going to take a quick short break here. This is the GSMC Weird News Podcast. Once again, we're all over social media. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up on Instagram. I want to hear how you feel about clowns. I want to hear if you love them, you find them hilarious. If you'll go to a circus and just laugh your butt off watching them get out of tiny cars or whatever. Or if you're like me and you're terrified of them. Or, hey, maybe you'll go to clowndate.com and find the love of your life. Maybe you're really attracted to clowns. No judgments here. Anyway, I'm Mark Swan, and we'll be back after the break.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network, if you didn't know, if I haven't mentioned it enough. I'm your host, Mark Swan, and we have had such a weird and wonderful episode today. I hope you had a fun time with me as we talked about which celebrities we would fight in space, and furthermore, if we would even watch a TV show about anybody fighting in space. Regardless if you were going to watch it or not, it's happening. We're living in the generation where we're having MMA fighters fight in zero gravity. Anyway, we signed up for a paranormal dating site, and once again, I am going to follow up on this one. I'm going to hit a couple people up. Hopefully they're not upset. Hopefully they maybe want to answer some questions. I'd love to hear some tales of people who bring the paranormal into their love and dating life. It's a cool subject. I don't know enough people who are into the paranormal. If you're listening, let me know if you're into the paranormal. Let me know if you're looking for love. I'm not looking for love, but maybe we could hook you up with somebody on paranormaldating.com. And maybe you're into clowns, which I'm still reeling over finding clowndate.com. But hopefully your lover doesn't end up in a strange worldwide mass mystery phenomenon, because we went back in time and looked at the 2016 Mysterious Clown Sightings. In this humble podcast host's opinion, that was definitely the strangest occurrence of modern mass hysteria. And what is mass hysteria anyway? Well, according to Medical News Today, mass hysteria is a phrase that is used often and imprecisely to refer to anything from giving into fashion fads to participating in riots and raves, and has become something of a fluid concept, synonymous with anything with a negative connotation that involves a participation of a large group of people. Now, under this broad definition, hysteria could include any sort of mimetic thing that happens these days. Like, I would argue that flash mobs could be seen as mass hysteria just because so many people were participating in things like that. Planking could be mass hysteria. The negative connotations sort of solidifies what we're looking at, which is, for some reason, any large amount of people has something detrimental happen to them, and there's not really a reason why, at least not by modern psychology studies. That's why today I wanted to go throughout the ages, because mass hysteria is not a new thing. It's been around since before history. I'd like to go through my top 6 favorite cases of mass hysteria. And we're going to start with a fairly commonly known one that has actually been making the rounds in the news as of late. This is a pretty popular one. This one is known as the Dancing Plague of 1518, in which a woman in Strasbourg, France, started dancing randomly in the streets, and then she didn't stop dancing. And when they tried to stop her, they being authorities or members of her family or other people of the community, when they tried to stop her, they were not successful. She wouldn't stop dancing. And the worst part of it is that people started joining her, and they couldn't stop dancing. It became such a problem for the town that so many people danced to exhaustion that they used unique methods to sort of deal with the problem, including paying people to play music. They used torture. They used religious rites. And there were cases that could be disputed that some people danced to their deaths. There are several theories as to why this dancing plague hit Strasbourg like it did, one of which being food poisoning and another being stress induced by all of the turmoil that came to Strasbourg at the time. But since the event happened so long ago, we don't have proper medical record to study it. And so it becomes sort of a historical oddity. Number 5 on our list is another one that you've probably heard of. These were the Salem witch trials that started in 1692 when a group of young girls in Salem, Massachusetts claimed to be possessed by the devil and accused local women of witchcraft. These Salem trials are not an isolated incident. Accusing people of witchcraft was something that didn't only happen in the American colonies around that time, but happened throughout Europe and other territories as well. However, the Salem ones are the most famous as they were the most broad and seen as mass hysteria, as it basically put Salem into a panic. And nobody was to be trusted. Everybody was walking around the village accusing each other for witchcraft. The reason why this one is one of my favorite cases of mass hysteria is because of a really celebrated theory in the modern study of the event. Historians out there theorize that there was a mold in the crops that was giving the villagers of Salem hallucinogenic visions, and they had no idea what was going on, and they literally thought that they were being assaulted by magic and the devil. People dispute this, but it's the theory that I like the most, and it certainly goes down as one of the most recognized cases of mass hysteria. Number 4 on our list was the mass hysteria event brought on by the death of Gloria Ramirez, or the Toxic Woman. Gloria was admitted to a hospital in Riverside, California, while she was receiving treatment for cervical cancer. While she was being treated and diagnosed, several hospital workers fainted, and others experienced symptoms such as shortness of breath and muscle spasms. Beyond that, there were claims that Gloria had an extremely horrible smell and that her blood was possibly toxic. When treatment staff went to take a sample of some of Gloria's blood, it was noticed that there were strange particles floating in the syringe. And afterwards, medical staff started feeling strange symptoms. Before long, an emergency was declared and the hospital actually went into quarantine, in which case a team had to come in and investigate. Investigations didn't come up with anything conclusive, and it was very popularly theorized that the entire incident was entirely psychological on the medical staff's part. Number 3 is a mass hysteria event that happened on one of my favorite entertainment mediums, the radio. I am, of course, talking about the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast that brought on a nationwide event of people thinking that aliens had invaded. If you're not familiar with this was a radio play put on by Orson Welles, adapting the literary classic War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, except the presentation of the play was unique at the time because it played out as if it was a news broadcast that was actually happening. In the story, or at least in the adaptation, a radio news officiant is reporting on strange gases that are being reported in the night sky. Then a UFO comes down to Earth, and before they know it, it starts zapping the U.S. military as well as the radio commenter present for the event. Due to a number of misunderstandings, listeners were not made aware that this wasn't a real occurrence. A lot of people weren't listening at the beginning when they announced that this was just a work of fiction. And as such, hundreds of people throughout the country were calling into their emergency services, finding out what they were supposed to do since there was an alien invasion. After all was said and done, Orson Welles comes on the radio and says that the whole thing is a hoax. It was just an act of fiction. And of course, the audience was none too happy. But this is such a funny one, and one of my favorite things to study when it comes to how the TV, the radio, or any other broadcast can have an effect on people. It can cause something this tumultuous and this widespread. Number 2 on our list occurred in 1917 when 3 children of Fatima, Portugal, reported that they had apparitions of an angel. And furthermore, that this apparition was welcoming a further apparition of the Virgin Mary. Apparently, the Virgin Mary was going to bring a prophecy of a great war. And then, a couple days later, on October 13th of that year, the Virgin Mary would reveal herself and perform a miracle so that all would believe in her. Now, even if Fatima was a religious location back in the early 1900s, you would probably make the assumption that nobody took these 3 kids seriously when they were running around making claims like they were talking to angels about the Virgin Mary. However, that's not the case. This story spread so quickly that it was actually covered by many local newspapers. And on the day that the prophecy was supposed to take place, the 13th of October, there was a gathering of over 30,000 people to witness the event. The event itself, well, obviously we don't have a recorded event. This was before the time of easily accessible video cameras or anything like that. However, many claims were made and agreed upon by the crowd and other official sources. According to many witnesses, after a period of rain, the dark clouds broke and the sun appeared as an opaque spinning disk in the sky. It was said to be significantly duller than normal and to cast multicolored lights around the landscape, the people, and the surrounding clouds. The sun was then reported to have careened towards the earth before zigzagging back to normal position. This is just one of many claims, but there are so many other claims that are corroborated by other members at the scene of the miracle, saying that the Virgin Mary did appear, that she did speak, and that more dazzling visual things happened. There actually are pictures of this event, but because the cameras are so outdated and they're literally taking pictures of the sun, we don't really have images of anything like that happening. However, it is gone down as one of the most famous modern religious events, and skeptics are quick to point this out as a mass hysteria event. This was actually the first event I ever read about that got me into the topic of mass hysteria, and that's why it is so high on my list. My number one favorite case of mass hysteria is an event that some may argue is still happening today. This is, of course, the many, many modern claims of UFOs and other alien sightings. Before I get any angry comments, I do want to say that the existence of UFOs is something that is heavily documented and heavily disputed, and I am not claiming that it is only mass hysteria as to why we are seeing so many strange things in the sky in modern times. The first instances of modern UFO sightings were deemed by the Central Intelligence Agency as an act of mass hysteria, and there were many reasons to say why. The CIA was dealing with a lot around the time when these first sightings cropped up. We were right in the middle of the Cold War. There was the constant looming threat of nuclear war, and we were also seeing a boom in things like the economy, in technological advancements. There were lots of things going on with the military at the time, explicitly covert Air Force operations and use of experimental aircraft and any sort of radar technology that was not known to the public. And the public in turn responded in a way that could be seen as predictable. So much stress going on in the country and throughout the world for that matter. So many things going on that there aren't a lot of public explanations for. A lot of claims came forth of people witnessing things like UFOs, being abducted by aliens, experiencing aliens, driving home at night and perhaps seeing something that they can't explain and demanding an answer for it from their government. It, of course, didn't help that the prospect of leaving our atmosphere, traveling to space, and possibly finding life out there that doesn't belong to the Earth was becoming a topic that transcended science fiction. There were serious news publications that were asking questions like, what if we find life beyond Earth out there? And back in that time, the public really didn't know how to respond. The CIA was tasked with finding the reasonings as to why there were so many recent claims of UFOs and other phenomena, and their explanation is a bit more mundane than you might hope or expect. They chalk the whole thing up to public stress and hysteria, and that it was very quickly and aggressively overwhelming the resources of the U.S. government. Furthermore, the agency feared that there was a foreign influence on all of the claims, stating that it could be fear-induced from foreign agencies that were meddling where they didn't belong and planning a sort of psyop assault on America. They do claim that most of the sightings by people are easily explainable, and you can make your own conclusions as far as that's concerned, because it's an ongoing argument that happens to this very day that perhaps life is out there, perhaps the government knows about it, perhaps there are visitors from other worlds, and we're simply not supposed to have a definitive answer about it. I put this at the top because if it's not a genuine experience, it is certainly the most longest running and coolest case of mass hysteria. Well, that about wraps it up for today. I've had so much fun with you. I'm hoping to get a paranormal date, maybe a date with a clown. I'm hoping to fight some celebrities in space, and I'm hoping not to be caught up in the next act of mass hysteria. Hey, I want to hear your thoughts. Go to social media. Tell me about your experiences. Let me know if you have any suggestions for the next GSMC Weird News podcast. I am always willing to listen to the public and talk about what they want to talk about. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review that really helps us. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you.